This is going to be a short video on replacing the starter on a 2012 Fiat 500. As you can see, I have the starter there already. I've seen a short video that wasn't really helpful except for the description on doing the starter. I'm going to attempt from the bottom first before removing the battery. But as always, starting off by removing the negative battery terminal and isolating it to avoid any electrical issues, because we are dealing with the starter and there's electricity involved down there. I'm not going to be documenting as it goes. We're going to be just documenting the steps and any issues that may crop up. All right, we have the bottom cover off underneath the car. Just want to show the location of the starter. Make sure you jack it up. You need some real good height to get underneath there. Make sure you put a support jack so that you don't come down on your head. We're just going to show the location. It's on the passenger side. You got your oil pan right here. You go past the oil pan. And right underneath the axle right there is the starter. There's the starter right there. Kind of hard to see it, but that's it right there. One bolt does look like you can get at it right here from the back. I don't believe you have to go from the top. If you had a lip, it'd be much easier. And I do notice there is a little wetness around the axle right here, which I'll have to take care of later on. But we just want to get the starter in so we can get her over to emissions, which expires today. Well, we took the bottom off, got underneath there and looked, as we already showed you. One of the bolts, you do have to come up through the top end. You have to take the battery out, battery carrier. I just want to point out a couple things there on this thing here. As you can see, the two bolts that are coming out, they screw down into an open frame with a press nut down in there. Totally rusted out. It's a matter of going, loosen it as much as you can before it binds. Spray some PB Blaster on it, put it back down, and just keep repeating, and it'll eventually come out. Each one took me about 10 minutes to get out, but nothing is broken. As you can see, they all came out. You can see where they're all rusted on the bottom side. There's no way to get underneath there, so you just have to let the PB soak down around the threads that you're going in and out, up and down. It'll let it go through, and eventually it'll break it up for you, and then you can get that out. And also, when you do take the box out, I just want to point out that there's a couple wire ties that can get you. One of them being right up here, and there's two down along the side right there. And you have to disconnect the connector there, and then there's two wire ties. Those are what they call the tree wire ties. They go into a hole. Everybody should carry them when they're doing their own work, because once you take them out, you can't put them back. They're pretty well destroyed. I use those all the time. So once you get out the, once I get the tray all the way out, I'll come back and show where the one location is and probably the best tools to get to it. When removing the battery box, remove the three bolts that hold it down. Right here and here. Be careful, they are pretty rusted into the frame. Took me half an hour to get each one out, going back and forth with the PB. And you have the one there. This will allow you to move this right here to give you the room to manipulate these. The way it's set up in the car, when everything's placed in, this wire right here interferes with the slide coming back. So if you have this loose, you can have the wire off to the side, work the slide the way it needs to be done, and then put the wire back underneath when you put it down into place. This one over here isn't as bad. This is the one that is the troublemaker. Again, if you have the battery box loose, you'll find it easier to insert and remove this. So first undo the bolts, then go to this and put this in while it's loose before putting your bolts in when it's reassembled. Okay, we have the battery box out of the Fiat, and I just want to show the location of the top bolt for the starter. And if you look down right in the center of the screen, right there, is a little rubber plug. That plug has to come out, and the bolt is underneath that right there. I'm going to pull the plug off, and then I'll come back and document the bolt itself. Okay, the cover is off. Right in the center of the screen is the cover, as a matter of fact. And there's the hole over there. And you can just see the head of the bolt right there, 13. So far, everything on the starter itself has been 13. So it's just a matter of getting a wrench down there and pulling it out. And then we'll go under, we'll remove the last bolt from the starter, and we'll pull the starter out. We'll put it back up, the new one in. We'll put that one bolt in, we'll come on top and put the top bolt in, and put it all back together. And we'll document if we have any more troubles or issues. One of the things I wanted to point out was the importance of checking the starter before installing. A lot of people reporting that rebuilt or new starters are just not working once they get in, so I want to point out how to test this starter. Basically, I have a pair of jumper cables. I have them set over to the other ends on the batteries, and as you can see right here, the positive, I have a jumper wire here in between the nut and here, and if you look closely over here, that jumper wire is going to go to right here underneath. There's an insulator right there. Now I'm pointing this out because this is important later when installing. They have a ring wire that goes over this spring load that press against that. If you don't have that installed correctly, you're not going to get contact when you turn the key. It's not going to turn over, and you're going to think you have a dead starter. So always test the starter first. Basically, all you have to do is put the jumper cables on like you see here. Put your foot on it because it does want to torque a little bit when it starts up. And take your wire in and just touch it right over to the end right here. And you see, we have a good starter. Bendix popped out, spun good and strong, and that's it, that's tested. So next I'm going to show you the connector underneath the car, and one of the tips that will help you installing the starter and removing the starter. Okay, I'm trying to show you the clip that goes on right here. Here's the large ring right here. That's the one that's going to go on first over the starter bolt, and it actually sits inside the connector right here. If you can see this little ring right here, that presses up against there, and this sets right in like that right there. Now once that's on there, now you can see on the back side there's a solid metal piece right here. This sits down inside there. And this whole thing actually holds the end of the starter up. When you insert the starter, you put the bolt through here, this whole assembly here, and that holds the starter up in place while you're putting the bolts in. Otherwise, the back of the starter wants to drop down. And this is pretty inflexible right here, this metal piece right here that sits inside the plastic. So you have to push it in when you put the starter up. You can't pull it off and put it on the back of the bolt. It won't go on properly. So you have to hold this whole thing together, put the starter end bolt up into there, and then put it up into place. That'll hold the end up, and you just put your bolts in right here is one of them to start it, and then the other one is from the top, as I showed before. Pay careful attention to it, because this little spring clip right here wants to pop out. You want to make sure that you put it back the same way, okay? And this thing, and the metal part right there slides up onto there. There's a little piece of plastic in back there that it has to go in behind when it slides up to lock it in place. You'll feel it when you push it up in. And once you get it locked up in, put your starter up in. I just wanted to point out, I'm getting ready to assemble the, put the starter in. As you can see right here, this is the, goes over the terminal there, the end of the starter. You put it up into there. I've got it assembled. And if you look up over to the center upper, you can see the cover that was snapped over the end. What I did was I took and I put it and placed it so it goes over the top of the wire harness there. And that holds everything up into place. And before you snap the cover on, just unwind it from there and snap it on. This will help with the assembly because everything stays together without something to hold that up to your metal piece inside, or doesn't want to stay by itself. So by taking this little trick of taking the cover and putting it up, unfortunately I can't get my hand up in there to point while I'm doing the camera, but I'm sure you can see the snap-on cover, how it wraps around right there on the piece of wire. And you can see the whole assembly is together. The ring wire is there ready to go. And now just put the tail, the long bolt of the starter right there up into there, and then put my first bolt in. It should be set to go then. Starter is out, and to get the top bolt, basically use a ratchet with 2 long extensions, the swivel, and the 13. And there's your bolt right there. It's long enough so that you can leave the bottom bolt in that you can get at, this one over here that you can get at from underneath. You leave that in and take this one out, and it'll come out far enough past that opening so you don't have to worry about the screw falling down into the opening there where you're pulling it out of. And then go down and pull the last bolt. Of course, it's going to be rusted in. Just take a piece of wood, and I use my little trusty Bertha there. All it took was one good solid tap, and it loosened right up, and I pulled the bottom bolt out and it came right down. You do have to twist and turn it a little bit to get the path down, but very easy, very doable. Make sure you do reinstall the shim. If they're identical, should be measure out here to the nose cone, and they should be identical. If they are, make sure you use the shim plate. Other than that, that's pretty much a reversal of taking it out, putting it back. Put it up, put the bottom bolt in, get it so it's just snug. There's a guide thing right here that'll guide it in to make sure that it's set up when you put it up, and you can tighten the bottom one up. Then go in and do the top one, and then you're all set, except for putting the electrical on, which is pretty basic. I would get all the bottom done and then put the top back together so that you don't have to go back underneath there. If I encounter any issues putting it back together, I'll document that. Otherwise, that's pretty much how you're going to change out a starter on the 2012 Fiat 500. And I think they're pretty much the same up to about the 2016. Don't quote me on it, though, please. Any comments? They are appreciated.